In no particular order, here are 10 beneficial scenes in Star Wars films. I might make an expanded version with all the Clone Wars and all the other stuff included, but for now, this is just the films. And debate with yourself in the comments what your favourite Star Wars scene is. So, first of all, we've got Qui-Gon's death. I think this is so important because it's the big step up for Obi-Wan. The moment where he really has to become the Jedi Master almost, and he has to train Anakin, and he has a really big boots to fill in Qui-Gon's, who is arguably one of the most wise and overall best Jedi of all time, and definitely one of my favorites. The character is amazing, and it was really, really cool when he came back in Obi-Wan, but I'm getting sidetracked. That scene is very important. It also shows almost the end of an era in the Jedi Council, the next wave of Jedi to come through. Now we skip forward a few years and we go to Vader killing Palpatine at the end of Return of the Jedi. This was the moment Anakin really came back and truly fulfilled his destiny, saving Luke, helping Luke, and really letting all the darkness away, and he joined the light side again. It was a good father-son bonding moment. Pretty self-explanatory why, really. Now we go back to Anakin when he turned to the dark side, and this was when he killed Windu. This scene, I think, is just like the first, not really the first straw, but the first real thing he did basically as Vader, because he was basically Vader at that point. Not officially, but that was basically when he decided the Jedi were against him. He needed to turn, he needed to do this for Padme, and he kills Windu. This was when he sacrificed everything and allowed Palpatine to become his master. He let the darkness flow through him. And moving on swiftly now, we've got to Anakin kneeling just a few moments later to Palpatine, calling him master, doing whatever he says, serving his life now to the dark side. The scene is incredibly beneficial as it is the real moment we see Anakin turn into Vader. This is the official moment he turns into Vader, the most iconic person in movie history. Now, I was looking at this list and realised we didn't have any sequels, so I kind of put this in just out of guilt for Disney. I've put Luke's death. I think he's such an important character, but I really hate this scene. Like, it's very beneficial, but it's so poorly done. The disrespect they did to Luke's character, just kind of flopping, showing he was too weak. It was a very weird one, and it went against a lot of what Luke believed, I thought, The Last Jedi. But this scene, I think, has to be in here because, you know, he's the face of Star Wars when it first came out. Luke Skywalker was everyone's hero, and, you know, this was his death. This was also the moment he faced Kylo Ren, and we saw how weak and scared Kylo Ren really was. Now we've got a scene that I've made a video on about why memes ruined this scene. It's the high ground scene. I don't really know what to call it. You know, the classic, it's over Anakin, I've got the high ground scene. This one was like the moment where Obi-Wan knew he'd won, but he couldn't really bring himself to kill Anakin. But that was kind of a different thing in itself. Obi-Wan knew he was successful. He knew he'd defeated his old apprentice, and he knew, or he thought, this was the moment where the Jedi would actually survive a bit longer, but it turns out, obviously, that didn't happen. This scene is way too memed upon, though, and people overlook how important this scene really is. Now we've got the Luke, I am your father scene, and this one was a shock in cinemas. It just changed everything. It just changes everything. Luke figuring out Vader's his father changes his whole perspective on him. He really, from hating the guy to now, doesn't know what to feel about him. He can't really believe it. He doesn't really believe it. And then Yoda, of course, confirms it later. But that scene is like the most iconic scene in movie history, I reckon. I mean, you can argue with me, but I definitely think that is the most iconic scene in movie history. Now we go back a few more years and we are at Qui-Gon meets Anakin. If one thing changed, if that ship was slightly better, then this would never have happened. But this, you know, is introducing Anakin Skywalker to the Star Wars world. And although Anakin was very, very badly portrayed in this film, I thought it's still a very important scene. And Qui-Gon meets Anakin. But if the ship, I'm always just thinking, if they didn't need those extra bits, what would have happened if they'd never met Anakin Skywalker? Now, basically in the same scene, we go to Padme meets Anakin. This one, you know, without Padme in the Star Wars universe, without Padme and Anakin meeting, he wouldn't have turned to the dark side, making it very beneficial. It was a weird interaction at first. Anakin was very confident, as he always is. But, you know, it's very important. And the two most underratedly key characters in Star Wars, I reckon, together, without them being together, the whole Star Wars thing wouldn't add up. So, you know, it's very important that this scene did happen. And now finally, arguably the most underrated scene when it comes to importance is Obi-Wan visiting Kamino. Think about it, if he had never done this, then we wouldn't really have the Clone Wars and the battle would be very different. You know, Order 66 wouldn't even happen. Palpatine probably wouldn't be able to take control. There was an interesting scene in Tales of the Jedi where Dooku was basically erasing Master Cypher Diaz's archive of him getting the clone, so the Jedi would never know, and that's why it was such a shock. But it was such an important scene.